The artificial gravity aboard Station Meridian always felt a little off after a double shift, like the regulators were trying to imitate planetary gravity and barely getting it right. After 16 hours hauling containers and locking down freight manifests, Ryan Mitchell felt like someone had attached lead plates to his boots. His shoulders throbbed, his arms shook faintly from fatigue, and the only thing he could think about was the lukewarm meal pack waiting in his quarters dispenser. If fate was kind, maybe he'd get 6 hours of sleep before the next rotation. Shift change had turned the market district into its usual mess. Stalls flickered their neon signs. Hawkers shouted in at least a dozen dialects. The scent of frying algae mixed with metallic tang and alien pheromone trails. Theosian merchants, their translucent skin pulsing in irritated patterns, clogged the walkway. Ryan slipped between them, trying to ignore the chorus of languages buzzing in his tired ears. He was trying to remember if the mess hall still had any of that halfway decent chicken substitute left, or he was doomed to the gray nutrient paste that claimed to be rich in essential proteins. His mom back on Earth would have teased him. Humanity had reached the stars, and her son's biggest concern was whether dinner had texture. He took a corner too sharply. His elbow brushed something soft. Then his momentum carried him forward, directly into someone's backside. Specifically, Ryan jerked backward, as if electrocuted. His mouth moved faster than his brain. "Sorry, I didn't mean I wasn't." The sentence died as the woman turned around. Lady Savara. He'd seen her before. Everyone had. You couldn't miss someone like her. She moved through crowds like gravity bent away from her presence. Her skin was pale enough to make the station's LEDs look harsh. Her crimson eyes locked onto Ryan like a predator sizing up prey. Elegant pointed ears peeked through dark hair, her long black attire embroidered with silver patterns that shimmered like starlight, and he had just bumped into her in front of half the marketplace. Conversations died. People stepped back instinctively, forming a widening circle of empty space. A Vidian family practically fled. Even the coffee vendor who'd sold Ryan his morning drink suddenly pretended labels on his jars needed rearranging. Savara's voice slid through the silence like velvet wrapped around a blade. "Do you wish to die, human?" Ryan's body froze. His throat dried instantly. "And no, my lady. I didn't see. I apologize, truly." "You assaulted me." She stepped closer, and Ryan caught the faint scent of something elegant yet unsettling, like flowers kept preserved far beyond their natural life. Under Sangua's law, that is an executable offense. His pulse hammered. Story said vampire kind could hear a heartbeat across the room, so she definitely heard the panic thundering through him. It was an accident," Ryan whispered. "A genuine mistake. Please." Silence. He obeyed instantly. Savara began to circle him, slow and deliberate, eyes cold and ancient. The crowd watched with horrified fascination. Her hand drifted toward an ornate blade at her waist. Symbols etched along the sheath glowing faintly. Ryan wondered if those grooves were ceremonial, or if they were meant to mark previous executions. He imagined his mother getting the news that her son had died because he'd been clumsy in a hallway after a 16-hour shift. Then Savara laughed, not a mocking laugh, not cruel, but bright, sudden, almost youthful. The kind of sound that didn't belong to a creature feared across half the galaxy. "You should see your expression," she said, lips curving in a fanged smile. Pure terror. Refreshing. Ryan blinked like he was malfunctioning. "I'm not going to kill you. Despite rumors, I don't slaughter everyone who annoys me." She leaned in slightly, voice dropping to silk-soft mischief meant only for him. "Though next time, try not to walk blindly. Some people might not find your clumsiness as amusing." She straightened, addressing the crowd. "Entertainment's over. Move along." The chaos resumed, though now people glanced at Ryan like he'd grown a second head. Savara paused before leaving, amusement sparking in her crimson eyes. "What's your name, clumsy human?" "Ryan. Ryan Mitchell." "Well, Ryan Mitchell," another fanged smile. "If you feel compelled to assault nobility again, make sure it's me. At least I find it entertaining." She glided away, the crowd parting in perfect instinctive fear. Ryan stood still, brain trying to reboot. He had almost died. Or had he just been flirted with by an alien vampire? He wasn't sure which possibility terrified him more. Ryan discovered he was famous exactly 12 hours after nearly getting executed in the marketplace. He walked into the cargo bay expecting the usual monotony of shift start procedures, but instead found his entire crew staring at him like he'd sprouted an extra limb. "There he is," Jace announced, practically bouncing with excitement. "The man who grabbed Lady Savara's royal backside and survived." "I did not grab anything," Ryan protested, feeling heat crawl up his neck. "It was an accident. I bumped into her." "Big difference." Min, the shift supervisor, leaned against a cargo crate with her usual unimpressed expression, her neural interface flickering along her temple. "Funny," she said. "Station gossip doesn't mention anything about an accident. They're saying you practically assaulted vampire nobility and she spared you. Some workers are taking bets on how many days you have left." Ryan groaned, rubbing his face. She laughed about it. "That means I'm not dead, right?" Lady Savara laughed. Jace repeated like Ryan had just described seeing a unicorn. "The same Savara who made an ambassador cry last month just by raising an eyebrow." Ryan shrugged helplessly. "I don't know what to tell you." She thought it was funny. Min tapped her interface. Security logs confirmed she didn't file a complaint. "That's strange. Sanguis nobles file paperwork if you sneeze too close to them." She narrowed her eyes. "Nothing else happened? No secret blood rituals? No accidental bonding ceremony?" Ryan sputtered. "What? No." She barely let me finish apologizing. Jace waggled his fingers dramatically. "Maybe she marked you. Vampires do weird stuff. Blood bonding, thrall making, mind weaving." "That's not real," Ryan insisted, though with far less confidence than he intended. By midday, 5 entirely incorrect versions of the incident had circulated the docks. In one, Ryan had boldly flirted with Savara as a political act. In another, she had kissed him on the spot. Jay showed him a gossip message claiming Ryan was secretly a government operative seducing vampire nobility for diplomacy reasons. "If I were a spy," Ryan replied dryly, "I think they'd have trained me to walk without smashing into people." "That's exactly what a spy would say," the Vidian worker across him muttered, skin shifting into a suspicious purple. When shift finally ended, Ryan took the long, quiet route back to his quarters, away from the markets, away from curious stares, away from the possibility of running into Savara again, while still mentally unstable from embarrassment. He just started eating his nutrient paste, which tasted exactly like sadness, when his door chimed. Jay stood outside, eyes wide with the excited energy of someone who'd found something worth ruining Ryan's night over. "Dude, you need to see this." "See what?" "Just come on." Jace practically dragged him to the communal recreation area, where dozens of people were crowded around the massive screen. On the news feed, an anchor spoke crisply. "Additional Sanguis envoys have arrived on Meridian to join the ongoing peace negotiations." The display shifted to show a group of Sanguis diplomats stepping off a shuttle, pale, regal, dangerous. Lady Savara walked among them, unmistakable even in the group. People whispered around the room. She's one of the senior delegates. Here she's over 300 years old. She fought in the Blood Wars. 300 years. Ryan swallowed hard. He hadn't even reached 30. "There's more," Jace murmured, handing Ryan his datapad. "Security came by earlier, asking questions about you." Ryan stiffened. "Why?" "Routine background check. They said it was because of the incident. Savara asked for it, didn't she?" Ryan guessed. "Probably. It's standard when a noble has contact with a civilian." Jace lowered his voice. "Dude, I'm being serious now. Sanguis aren't just strong. They're political, powerful, dangerous. You need to be careful." Ryan thought of the marketplace. Her crimson eyes, her voice like velvet dipped in steel, her laugh that didn't belong to the monster everyone claimed she was. "I know," he said softly. "Believe me, I know." That night, sleep refused to come. Ryan lay awake replaying every second of the encounter, overthinking every tone and gesture, especially that final whisper. If you make that mistake again, make sure it's with me. His datapad buzzed. A new message, routed through official diplomatic channels. He nearly dropped the device. It read, Orbital Garden Cafe. Tomorrow, 1,400 hours. I promise not to execute you. S. Ryan stared at it for a long, long time. Then he laughed. A slightly hysterical, slightly terrified laugh. He was having coffee with a 300-year-old vampire diplomat. This could only end extremely well, or catastrophically. Possibly both. Ryan changed outfits 3 separate times before admitting defeat and putting on a first shirt again. It was just coffee. Completely normal. Casual, except for the part where the person he was meeting could tear a door off its hinges and had diplomatic clearance to kill him with paperwork alone. The Orbital Garden Cafe was unlike any place Ryan had ever been. Plants, real plants, not fabricated greenery, grew in curated clusters beneath a transparent dome. The stars glittered overhead, and below the station, a planet's blue-green shimmer painted the curved glass. Diplomats usually met here. Administrators, important people, not cargo handlers who accidentally bumped into vampire nobility. The hostess, a woman with silver neural threading, smiled with suspicious knowingness. Mr. Mitchell, Lady Savara is expecting you. Of course she was already here. Of course Savara was early, elegant, and probably listening to half the cafe through those hypersensitive ears of hers. Ryan approached the table, heartbeat annoyingly loud in his own head. Savara sat near the window, the natural light softening the sharp, lethal contours of her usually imposing presence. Today she wore simpler attire, still formal, but less intimidating than the embroidered masterpiece from the marketplace. Her pointed ears twitched ever so slightly at approaching footsteps. "You came," she said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I wasn't entirely sure you would." Ryan eased into the chair, careful not to knock anything over. I wasn't sure what was worse, ignoring you or showing up." "Ah," she smirked. "So attending coffee with me was a lesser of 2 potential executions?" "Basically, yeah." Savara laughed lightly, an unexpectedly warm sound. "Relax, Ryan Mitchell. If I intended to kill you, I had been far more formal in my invitation." "That somehow makes it worse," he muttered. A hovering menu shimmered to life above the table. Savara gestured elegantly. "Order what you like. I recommend the synthetic blend. It's almost identical to the coffee I tasted on Earth centuries ago. Almost." Ryan ordered something safe. Coffee and a pastry. He doubted he'd manage more than a few bites with his nerves. Savara ordered something called Lunar Extraction Blend, which sounded like it required a safety briefing. "You still look nervous," she noted, fingers curling around her cup. "Are you afraid I've changed my mind about sparing you?" "Honestly, the thought crossed my mind." She rolled her eyes. "Please, if I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be sitting in a cafe with live foliage." "Oh, good. Very good." She sipped her drink with the ease of someone who never questioned her own place in the universe. "Now, tell me who you are, Ryan Mitchell. When you are not colliding with nobility, what do?" He blinked. "I haul cargo." Savara raised a brow. "And that's kind of it. You tell stories like there's more." Ryan gave a small, embarrassed grin. "Mostly it's lifting crates, checking manifests, avoiding accidents. Glamorous stuff. You know, completely different from galactic diplomacy." Savara actually snorted. Cargo handling and diplomacy aren't so different. Both involve heavy lifting and people yelling when things don't work. Ryan barked a laugh. "Your job probably pays better." "Not as much as you'd think," she muttered dryly. Their drinks arrived, delivered by a small floating service drone. Ryan watched as Savara curled her pale fingers around her cup. He noticed something he hadn't expected. Calluses. Subtle but real. He'd never imagined vampire nobles with calluses. "So," Ryan began carefully, "why exactly did you invite me?" "I mean, I'm honored. Terrified, but honored." Savara leaned back, studying with eyes that seemed to see through walls. Curiosity. You responded to fear with sincerity. You apologized without groveling. You did not run. You did not challenge me. You simply behaved like a normal person. That is rare. Ryan sipped his coffee. To be fair, I was too tired to run or think. And honesty again. She looked unexpectedly delighted. You're refreshing. They talked for nearly an hour. About trivial things. Dock accidents. The strange food options on Meridian. The fact that Savara's climate control quarters felt too warm for her species. She explained her ears could track sound direction individually, something Ryan found fascinating and slightly hilarious. By the time they finished, he wasn't terrified anymore. Still intimidated, absolutely, but less like prey trapped in a spotlight, and more like someone she actually wanted to speak to. When they stood to leave, Savara paused. "Would you object," she asked, "to meeting again? I find your company calming. You want to have coffee with a cargo handler? I want to have coffee with someone who treats me like a person." Ryan hesitated only a moment. Then, people are already talking. Might as well give them something interesting to gossip about. Savara's smile sharpened with amusement. "Wonderful. Same time next week." "It's a date," Ryan blurted, then panicked. "Not a date. Just, coffee." "Of course," she said smoothly, eyes glinting. "Just coffee." As she glided away, drawing stares in her wake, Ryan realized he wasn't sure what he had just agreed to, but he knew he was absolutely coming back. Their weekly coffees became a routine, strange, surreal, and somehow comforting. By the third meeting, Ryan didn't flinch every time Savara's ears flicked toward a noise. By the fourth, he started recognizing her tiny expressions. The slight ear droop when annoyed, the sharp twitch when something amused her, the way her fangs barely peeked out when she laughed for real. "Wait." Savara set down her cup with theatrical seriousness. "Explain this again." The Vidian mood crystals absorbed everyone's anxiety and reflected it back at amplified levels. Ryan groaned into his hands. Yeah, the entire dock was spiraling into emotional meltdown. We had 3 people crying, 2 arguing with themselves, and one guy convinced he was a disappointment to his ancestors. Savara burst into laughter so bright that nearby merchants turned to stare. Her ears darkened slightly. Embarrassment he'd learned. She cleared her throat. "Humans are wonderfully chaotic. You say that like it's a compliment." "It is," she insisted. "Your species treats catastrophe like mild inconvenience. It's endearing." Ryan grinned. "Glad our incompetence entertains you." "Deeply," she answered, sipping her drink. Their conversation shifted to odd station stories. Savara listened intently, occasionally offering glimpses of her own past, just fragments, often followed by a distant look in her crimson eyes. Today, though, something felt different. A subtle heaviness lingered under her calm expression, her pointed ears angled inward, a sign Ryan learned meant she was thinking too hard. "Something on your mind?" he asked. Savara hesitated, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "Do you know how long I've been alive, Ryan?" "You said over 300 years?" 347. Her voice softened. "That's a long time to remember things. Wars, losses, every mistake carved into memory like stone." Ryan didn't interrupt. He just listened. "When I was young, 60, perhaps, I believed war was glorious. Our people taught us that strength defined worth. Fear kept order. Mercy was a weakness." She looked down at her hands. "I was effective in war. Too effective." There was no pride in her voice, only exhaustion. Ryan swallowed. "That's a lot to carry." Savara nodded. "Longevity is a gift until it becomes a burden. You outlive friends, lovers, rivals, entire governments. And eventually, every connection feels temporary." She finally met his gaze. "That's why most sanguis keep to their own kind. Easier to endure centuries with people who understand the weight of time." "Then why bother with me?" Ryan asked softly. "I'm temporary, too." Her expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering behind ancient eyes. Because you remind me what it felt like to be alive. Before centuries of political games. Before war. Before fear became normal. Ryan's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say to something like that. She smiled faintly. Last week, you spent 20 minutes describing your mother's tomato plants. Ryan turned red. I was just talking. You asked. And I listened, she cut in gently, because you made something simple feel meaningful. I haven't felt that in decades. A quiet moment stretched between them, filled with soft cafe noise and the muted hum of the dome's environmental systems. Then Savara exhaled and leaned back. Enough heaviness. Tell me something trivial. Something human. Ryan obliged. He described Min's latest rant about mislabeled crates. Jace's theory that space coffee was secretly addictive. A Theosian who tried to pay for shipping with good vibes. Savara listened with growing amusement, her posture relaxing. You really are a delight, she said at last. Everyone else I deal with speaks in strategies and consequences. You speak in drop crates and existential crises caused by mood crystals. I can talk strategy, Ryan said defensively. I would be horrified if you did, she replied. I get enough of that from diplomats. As they stood to leave, Savara paused, her ears angled toward the entrance. Security is watching again. Ryan glanced over. 2 station officers stood discreetly near the door, pretending not to watch them. Are we a threat now? Ryan asked. Not you, she said. Me, and the possibility that you matter to me in ways that unsettle people. Ryan nearly tripped over his own feet. Wait, I matter to you? Savara's smile was soft but sure. Very much. And for the first time since he'd met her, Ryan felt fear melt into something else entirely. Hope. The diplomatic sector looked nothing like it had during their earlier meetings. It felt heavier. The lights were dimmer, shadows sharper. Sandwich warriors stood posted at intervals in formal armor, their red eyes tracking every movement with predator stillness. Ryan held the access pass Savara had sent him like it was a fragile lifeline. He didn't belong here. Cargo handlers didn't stroll through the most politically volatile section of Station Meridian. But Savara's message had been brief and urgent. Need to speak. Come to my quarters. Immediately, the guards outside her door examined his credentials for far too long, eyes lingering on him the way someone might inspect a suspect package. Eventually, they stepped aside. As the door sealed shut behind him, Ryan knew something was deeply, terribly wrong. Savara stood by the observation window, staring down at the station's central hub. She wasn't wearing diplomatic robes or elegant fabric tonight. Instead, reinforced dark attire, fitted sleeves, lightweight armor threaded beneath the seams. Clothing meant for movement, for danger. Savara? Ryan's voice came out small. What's going on? She didn't answer immediately. When she finally turned, he saw exhaustion buried beneath her calm expression. Her pointed ears angled back, an unmistakable sign of tension. Ryan, she said quietly, thank you for coming. I didn't know if you would. Your message said it was important. Of course I'd come. He stepped closer. What happened? Savara inhaled slowly, like the words tasted bitter. 3 days ago, Lord Caney arrived on the station. Ryan frowned. Who? A sanguine traditionalist. Old even by our standards. Influential. Dangerous. She paused. And he despises everything I stand for. The room seemed to shrink around them. He's here to challenge my diplomatic efforts, Savara continued, to undermine the peace accords, to rally others who believe we were stronger when we ruled through fear. That's horrible, Ryan muttered. It gets worse. She stepped toward him, movements sharp with frustration. Kane claims I'm compromised, that my judgment has been corrupted by sentiment toward lesser species. His words. Ryan blinked. Lesser species. You mean humans? Humans, she confirmed. And specifically you. Ryan nearly choked. Me? Savara closed her eyes briefly. Our weekly coffee meetings. Our friendship. He says it proves I've grown weak, that I'm mingling with mortals, letting softness cloud my decisions. Ryan swallowed hard. So, he wants you to stop meeting me. He demanded it. Her mouth twisted in disgust. Publicly. Loudly. He's gathering support among traditionalists. Some believe associating with you is dishonorable. Others simply hate humans. Ryan felt cold wash through him. So you're ending our meetings? Savara's eyes snapped open, burning with intensity. No. The word carried centuries of defiance. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know the truth, and because his followers haven't just been whispering. She lowered her voice. They've been watching you, following you. Ryan's stomach dropped. Following me? I suspect they're planning something. Savara moved a cabinet and retrieved a small encrypted chip. I arranged secure quarters for you in Sector 9. Fewer access points. Better surveillance. You should relocate immediately. Ryan stared at the chip. Or I could just leave, catch a transport back to Earth. That would solve everything. Savara froze. That, she said, would mean Caney wins. That fear still governs our choices. That nothing can change. She stepped closer, her expression softening. I don't want to live in that reality anymore. Her voice dropped to something vulnerable. Ryan, you matter. Our friendship matters. I won't let him erase it. Ryan's throat tightened. He'd never expected a centuries-old alien diplomat to say something like that. He took the chip from her hand, his fingers brushing hers. She felt cold as marble, steady, unshakable. This is insane, he whispered. I'm just a cargo handler. And I'm tired of being judged for caring about someone outside my own species, she said. Caney believes only power matters, only intimidation. I refuse to let him define who I can be. Before Ryan could respond, Savara's head snapped toward the door, her ears angling sharply. They're coming for me, she said in a low voice. Security will escort you out. Go. And Ryan, he paused at the threshold. Don't go anywhere alone. Not until this is resolved. What if someone approaches me pretending to represent humans? Ryan asked. Her expression darkened. Especially then. The doors opened. An armed guard stepped inside. Savara gave him one last look, a look filled not with fear, but with determination. Go, she whispered. I'll handle the politics. The doors closed behind him. And Ryan had never felt so aware that his life had suddenly become a very dangerous chapter in somebody else's war. The next 3 days were a blur of anxiety and clipped instructions from station security. Ryan barely left his new Sector 9 quarters except to work, and even then, 2 armed officers shadowed him everywhere. Sector 9 was nicer than anything he'd ever lived in. Soft lighting, quiet halls, advanced locks, but he hated it. It felt less like a home and more like a protective cage. Jace noticed instantly. You're jumpy, he said during shift change. Like, more than your usual brand of jumpy. I'm not jumpy, Ryan muttered. A container dropped somewhere in the distance, metal clanging loudly. Ryan leapt a full foot. Jace stared. Dude. Ryan didn't explain. Couldn't. Savara had been very clear. No details, not until things settled. Then on the 4th day, things didn't settle. They detonated. Ryan and his escorts were heading back from the loading docks when 3 figures stepped out of maintenance corridor ahead. Pale, elegant, wrong, sanguis. Everything happened too fast to track. One moment the guards were alert, weapons half raised. The next, the vampires blurred forward in a rush of movement so fast it smeared across his vision. Ryan barely got out of gas before both escorts hit the floor, unmoving. A cold hand closed around Ryan's throat. He slammed back against the wall, feet kicking helplessly. The vampire holding him was taller than Savara. Thick muscles, notched ears, ancient scarring that told stories of violence long past. His eyes burned crimson. You are the human contamination, the vampire hissed. The weakness Lady Savara refuses to relinquish. Ryan clawed at the hand, crushing his windpipe. No air, no sound. Dark blotches crept across the edges of his vision. Lord Caney sends his regards, the vampire added, and his disappointment. A spike of fear shot through Ryan's chest. He was going to die. Here, in a maintenance corridor. Because he had coffee with the wrong person. Then the pressure vanished. Ryan collapsed, coughing violently, throat burning. Through the blur of tears, he saw a shape crash into his attacker. Far smaller, far faster. Savara, she moved like living lightning. Her blade flashed once, silver arcs slicing the air. The corridor became a ballet of lethal precision. Savara's movements controlled and elegant, the attackers frantic and panicked. One reached for her from behind, but she twisted, spun, and slammed an elbow into his jaw with enough force to rattle the bulkhead. It was over in seconds. 3 Sanguis lay groaning on the floor. Savara stood over them, blade clean, chest steady. Not even her hair was out of place. Her eyes, normally calm, guarded, now blazed with fury, so intense it radiated heat. She turned to Ryan. "Are you hurt?" she demanded. He shook his head, too winded to speak. "Good." Savara activated her calm, voice sharp enough to cut through static. "This is Lady Savara. I need medical and security units at Junction 7C immediately. 3 assailants. Sanguis. Arrest but do not kill." She lowered her arm. Then she leaned over the attackers, voice dropping to icy steel. "Send word to Lord Caney," she said. "If he wishes to challenge my honor, he can face me directly." She sheathed her blade with deliberate calm. "I am finished entertaining cowards." The observation dome had never looked less like a garden and more like an arena. Plants remained, yes, but the atmosphere was taut enough to snap. Dozens of delegates from multiple species stood in a wide circle, observing strict Sanguis protocol. Ryan stood among them, throat still bruised, heart thundering. He should not be here. But Savara had insisted. Across the dome, Lord Caney entered, every bit the war-hardened legend. 2 meters tall, thick shoulders, scars carved like history across his pale skin. His presence sucked the warmth out of the room. Savara entered next. No gown, no elegance, just simple combat attire and the same blade she had used to save Ryan's life. She found him in the crowd, gave a small nod. The officiating elder raised his voice. "This challenge concerns honor and loyalty. Lady Savara stands accused of compromised judgment. Lord Caney challenges her right to represent the Sanguis people." The duel began without ceremony. Caney launched forward like a charging beast, striking with sheer brute strength. His blade swung in heavy arcs designed to overwhelm instantly. Savara avoided each strike with tiny, precise movements, dancing a hair's width from death. Ryan couldn't breathe. Savara struck back. Quick cuts, deliberate, clean. Not killing blows. "Not yet. She's holding back," someone whispered in the crowd. "She's making a point," another murmured. Minutes stretched like hours. Caney slowed. Savara did not. Finally, Caney faltered. Savara's blade pressed his throat. "Yield," she said softly. "This does not need to end in blood." The dome fell silent. Mercy was not the Sanguis way. But Savara waited, breathing hard. Caney stared at her, anger shifting slowly into something like reluctant respect. "You would spare me," he rasped, "after I ordered your human's death." "He is not my possession," Savara said. "He is my friend." Silence. Then, "I yield." A shock wave of murmurs exploded across the dome. The elder raised his voice. "Lady Savara's honor is affirmed. This matter is concluded." Savara walked toward Ryan, hands trembling only slightly now that the fight was over. "That," Ryan whispered, "was the wildest thing I've ever seen." "Which part?" she asked tiredly. "The duel? Or the mercy?" "You risked everything," he said, voice thick. "For me." She smiled, a real soft smile. "You're worth fighting for." Ryan swallowed. Hard. "So coffee next week?" She laughed quietly. "Please. After this, I could use something normal. Tell me another story about drop crates." And for one rare moment, the future didn't feel terrifying. It felt possible.